Picture this, you wake up to a world where your morning coffee isn't brewed by a fancy machine, but by grinding two sticks together until your hands are raw. No thermostat to crank up, no corner store to grab a snack from just you, a pointy stick, and a woolly mammoth sizing you up like you're its next meal. Welcome to the Ice Age, folks, where every day was a high-stakes episode of Survivor Prehistoric Edition. In today's video, we're diving headfirst into the frozen chaos of that era, a time when fire wasn't just a tool, it was your lifeline. We'll explore how our ancestors stayed warm-hunted beasts that could crush them in a heartbeat and somehow laid the groundwork for us to complain about slow Wi-Fi today. So grab a blanket because just thinking about this time will give you chills, and let's travel back 20,000 years to see what it took to stay alive. The Ice Age wasn't just cold, it was a cosmic deep freeze that turned the planet into a giant ice cube. Glaciers the size of small countries crept across the land, swallowing forests and turning rivers into skating rinks. Temperatures could drop so low, your modern freezer would feel like a tropical resort. Our ancestors, bless their shivering souls, didn't have puffy jackets or heated car seats. They were out there in animal hides, huddling through nights that felt like forever, relying on their wits and a flickering flame to keep from freezing solid. Fire wasn't just nice to have, it was life itself. Imagine you're in a cave with your tribe, the wind screaming outside like a pack of wolves, and the only thing standing between you and turning into a popsicle is a pile of burning twigs. One wrong move, one gust of wind, and your fire's gone along with your shot at seeing tomorrow. So how did they even get that fire going? No lighters, no matches, just pure grit and a lot of elbow grease. They'd take a stick, spin it against another piece of wood until friction worked its magic and hope they didn't pass out from exhaustion before a spark caught. Think waiting for your phone to charge is annoying. Try spending an hour twirling a stick just to avoid frostbite and keeping that fire alive. That was a full-time job. Someone had to stay up feeding it sticks, shielding it from rain, and making sure it didn't turn their cave into a smoke-filled disaster. Fire was so precious that tribes would carry glowing embers when they moved, like it was the Olympic torch of survival. Compare that to us flipping a switch for heat or ordering takeout when we're too lazy to cook. Our ancestors would probably roll their eyes so hard they'd invent the wheel just to roll away from our whining. But fire wasn't just for warmth, it was the ultimate multi-tool. It cooked food, turning tough raw meat into something that didn't break your teeth, giving you the energy to outrun a saber-toothed cat. It scared off predators' hardened wooden spears to make them deadlier, and gave our ancestors a place to gather share stories, and maybe even crack the first prehistoric jokes. Picture a group of hunters around a fire, one waving a charred mammoth leg, grumbling, "Oh me burn meat again." Fire was the original social hub, pulling people together to plan, bond, and figure out how to not die before breakfast. It was like Netflix, but instead of binge watching, you were binge surviving. Speaking of food, let's talk about the grocery store situation, or rather, the complete lack of one. Today we stroll into a supermarket, grab a cart, and debate organic kale versus regular. Back then, shopping meant tracking a woolly rhinoceros for days, hoping it didn't turn around and gore you. Hunting wasn't a hobby, it was do or die. Our ancestors had to chase massive beasts across frozen plains with nothing but sharpened sticks and sheer audacity. One wrong step and you weren't just out of dinner, you were dinner. Even gathering wasn't easy. Picking berries or nuts was a gamble. Is this food or poison? No Google to check, just a gut feeling and a prayer. Yet somehow these people didn't just survive, they thrived enough to pass their genes down to us. What's mind-blowing is how much brainpower went into staying alive. These weren't just grunting cavemen, they were master problem solvers. They figured out where animals migrated, which plants wouldn't kill you, and how to turn a pile of rocks into a windproof shelter. No GPS, no weather apps, they read the stars, the wind, and animal tracks like we scroll through our phones. And they did it all while dodging avalanches, blizzards, and predators that saw them as a walking buffet. Compare that to us freaking out when our delivery app crashes. Our ancestors would probably laugh at our first world problems, or maybe cry seeing how soft their descendants turned out. So why should we care about a bunch of freezing, spear-wielding humans from 20,000 years ago? Because their struggle shaped who we are. Every time you flick on a light or order pizza, you're standing on the shoulders of those fire-tending, mammoth-hunting legends. Their survival wasn't just about grit, it was about ingenuity, teamwork, and a stubborn refusal to quit. But here's the real question, are we all that different? Sure, we've got smartphones and central heating, but what happens when the power goes out or the Wi-Fi dies? Could we spark a fire track, a meal, or build a shelter without a YouTube tutorial? As we cozy up in our climate-controlled lives, it's worth asking, have we gotten smarter or just lazier? Stick around, because next we're digging deeper into the raw, gritty details of Ice Age life, how our ancestors turned a frozen hellscape into a home, and what we can steal from their playbook to toughen up our modern selves. So we've established that the Ice Age was less winter wonderland and more frozen nightmare. Our ancestors didn't just sit around shivering, though they got to work turning a world of ice and teeth into a place they could call home. Fire was their best friend, sure, but survival took more than a warm glow. It took brains, guts, and a knack for teamwork that makes our group chats look like child's play. In this part, we're diving deeper into the gritty details of Ice Age life, how these early humans hunted monsters, built shelters from scratch, and outsmarted a world that seemed dead set on wiping them out. Plus, we'll see what their hustle can teach us about handling our own modern messes. Let's step back into the frost and figure out how they didn't just survive, but laid the foundation for everything we take for granted today. Hunting in the Ice Age wasn't like grabbing a bow and arrow for a weekend hobby. It was a life or death showdown with creatures that make your average grizzly bear look like a teddy. Picture a woolly mammoth, 10 tons of fur tusks longer than your car, and a temper that could flatten a village. Our ancestors didn't have rifles or tranquilizer darts. They had spears tipped with flint, maybe a few rocks, and a whole lot of courage. Taking down a beast like that wasn't a solo mission. It required a tribe working like a well-oiled machine. They'd track the animal for days, reading its footprints in the snow, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. One wrong move, and you weren't just missing dinner, you were getting trampled into the permafrost. Success meant food for weeks, hides for warmth, and bones for tools. Failure. Well, let's just say the mammoth wasn't the only one who didn't make it home, but it wasn't all about brute force. These people were clever. They'd use the landscape to their advantage, driving animals into narrow valleys or off cliffs to make the kill easier. Think of it as prehistoric parkour, but with higher stakes. They also set traps pits covered with branches to snare unsuspecting beasts. Imagine the planning that went into that, scouting the terrain, coordinating the team, and hoping nobody tripped at the wrong moment. Compare that to us, where hunting means scrolling through a delivery app to decide between sushi or burgers. Our ancestors would probably look at our indecision and say, "You've got food at your fingertips and you're still complaining." Gathering was just as intense. With no grocery stores or farmers markets, finding edible plants was like playing botanical Russian roulette. Some berries could keep you alive, others could have you clutching your stomach in regret. Our ancestors had to memorize which plants were safe where they grew and when to find them in a world where seasons were more endless winter than spring bloom. Women and children often took on this role, scouring the tundra for roots, seeds, or anything that wouldn't poison the tribe. It wasn't just about food, plants were medicine too. Got a wound from a saber-toothed cat. Better hope someone knew which leaves to mash up to stop the bleeding. No WebMD, no pharmacies, just trial error and a lot of hoping for the best. Shelter was another puzzle they cracked with ingenuity. No Home Depot, no blueprints, just whatever the land gave them. Caves were prime real estate, but they weren't always available, so our ancestors got creative building huts from mammoth bones and hides insulated with moss or sod to keep out the wind. Picture stacking heavy bones like a prehistoric Lego set, then draping it with skins to block the cold. These weren't just shelters, they were engineering feats designed to withstand blizzards and keep the fire burning inside. And they had to be mobile too. Tribes often followed migrating herds, so they'd pack up their lives and rebuild somewhere new. Next time you complain about moving apartments, think about hauling a mammoth skull across a glacier. What really set these people apart was their ability to work together. Survival wasn't a solo sport. Hunting, gathering, building, it all required the tribe to function like a single organism. Everyone had a role. Hunters tracked the prey, gatherers found the plants, elders passed down knowledge, and someone always had to watch the fire. Mistakes were costly. If one person slacked off, the whole group could starve or freeze. This wasn't just about physical strength, it was about trust. You had to believe the guy next to you wouldn't bolt when a bear charged, or that the gatherer wouldn't hog the berries. Compare that to our modern teamwork, where we argue over who's not pulling their weight in a Zoom meeting. Our ancestors didn't have time for petty drama, they were too busy staying alive. Not every tribe made it though. The Ice Age was a brutal filter. Some groups didn't adapt fast enough to changing climates or dwindling food. Maybe they picked the wrong valley to hunt in, or their fire went out at the worst possible time. Those mistakes didn't just cost a meal, they could wipe out an entire community. The ones who survived were the ones who learned, adapted, and got better at reading the world around them. They didn't have science textbooks, but they were scientists in their own way, observing patterns, testing ideas, and passing down what worked. That knowledge how to track, build, heal, and cooperate was their legacy hardwired into our DNA. Now let's get real for a second. We're spoiled rotten compared to these folks. We've got apps to order food machines to wash our clothes and roofs that don't require mammoth bones. But are we really better off? Our ancestors faced a world that tried to kill them daily, yet they built communities, created tools, and even found time to carve little figurines out of bone, probably the Ice Age equivalent of posting on Instagram. Meanwhile, we lose it when our coffee order's wrong. Their struggles force them to be resourceful, resilient, and connected. We, on the other hand, sometimes feel isolated despite being connected 24/7. Maybe we're not as evolved as we think. Here's something to chew on. If you were dropped into the Ice Age, how long would you last? Could you outsmart a mammoth, find food in a frozen wasteland, or keep a fire going without a lighter? Be honest, most of us would be toast before the first blizzard. But those challenges shaped our ancestors into survivors, and their lessons are still relevant. In a world of climate change, supply chain hiccups, and endless notifications, maybe we need a bit of their grit. How can we channel that Ice Age ingenuity to tackle our own problems? Hang tight, because next we're zooming in on the legacy of their survival, how their triumphs and failures echo in our lives, and what we can learn to stop being such softies in a world that's still got its own dangers. We've just trekked through the frozen wilds of the Ice Age, where our ancestors turned fire into a lifeline, outsmarted beasts that could squash them, and built homes out of bones and sheer willpower. They didn't just survive a world that seemed hell-bent on wiping them out. They laid the tracks for us to roll into the modern age with our cozy couches and food delivery apps. But their story isn't just a dusty history lesson, it's a mirror that shows us who we are and what we might be missing. In this part, we're zooming out to see how their triumphs and struggles shaped humanity's path, why their survival tricks still matter, and what we can borrow from them to toughen up our soft screen-addicted selves. Let's unpack the legacy of the Ice Age and figure out what it means for us in a world that's traded mammoths for new kinds of monsters. Those early humans weren't just fighting for their next meal, they were building the blueprint for human survival. Every spear they sharpened, every fire they kept burning, every hut they pieced together was a step towards something bigger. Their ability to adapt wasn't just about dodging saber-toothed cats. It was about creating systems that let them thrive in a world that didn't care if they made it. Take their tools, they didn't just pick up a rock and call it a day. They chipped away at stones to make blades, crafted needles from bones to sew warmer clothes, and figured out how to turn animal sinew into thread. These weren't one-off hacks. They were innovations passed down through generations, each one making life a little less brutal. Think about that the next time you're annoyed that your phone's software needs an update. Our ancestors were basically coding survival 2.0 with nothing but rocks and grit. Teamwork was their secret weapon. The Ice Age wasn't a place for lone wolves unless you wanted to be an actual wolf's lunch. Tribes had to function like a single brain with every member pulling their weight. Hunters coordinated to take down massive prey gatherers, shared what they found, and elders taught the young how to spot danger or stitch a wound. This wasn't just about getting through the day, it was about building trust that lasted lifetimes. If someone didn't do their part, the whole group could go down. Compare that to today, where we ghost a group project because we forgot to check the shared doc. Our ancestors didn't have the luxury of flaking out, they knew survival meant showing up every time. That sense of community didn't just keep them alive, it's why we're here binge watching videos instead of running from bears. But let's not romanticize it too much. The Ice Age was a meat grinder. For every tribe that thrived, others didn't make the cut. Some starved when game vanished, others froze when their fire failed. Harsh climates and bad luck could erase entire communities, leaving no one to tell their story. The survivors weren't always the strongest or the fastest, they were the ones who learned from mistakes, adapted to new challenges, and kept moving forward. They didn't have history books, but they were writing one with every hard-won lesson. That resilience is baked into our genes, even if we don't tap into it much, while arguing over who gets the armrest on a flight. Now here's where it gets interesting. Their struggles didn't just vanish when the glaciers retreated. The Ice Age forced humans to develop skills, problem-solving, cooperation, creativity that became the foundation for everything from farming to cities to, well, the internet. Those early hunters tracking mammoths were the first data analysts reading patterns in the wild. The gatherers memorizing plants were the first botanists cataloging what kept the tribe alive. Even their art, those cave paintings of animals and hunts, wasn't just doodling, it was storytelling a way to share knowledge and keep the group tight. Every time you post a story online or brainstorm with your team, you're echoing what they started around a fire 20,000 years ago. We're not so different, just a lot less furry. So what can we take from these frostbitten legends? First, adaptability is everything. They faced a world that changed faster than a trending hashtag, with climates shifting and food disappearing. They didn't whine, they innovated. Today we've got our own challenges: climate change, tech overload, or just keeping up with life's chaos. Instead of doom scrolling, maybe we can channel their knack for rolling with the punches. Second, community matters. They survived because they leaned on each other, not because they were all superheroes. In our world of likes and follows, we sometimes forget the power of real connection. Maybe it's time to put down the phone and actually talk to the people around us. And finally, grit. They didn't give up when a hunt failed or a storm. We've journeyed through the frozen gauntlet of the Ice Age, where our ancestors wrestled with nature's worst, turned fire into their lifeline, and outsmarted beasts that could have turned them into a prehistoric snack. They didn't just scrape by, they built the foundation for everything we've got now, from skyscrapers to streaming services. But their story isn't just a cool tale to binge watch, it's a wake-up call about what it means to be human then and now. In this final part, we're tying it all together, reflecting on how their survival shapes our cushy modern lives, and asking the big question: are we ready for our own challenges, or are we just coasting on their hard-earned wins? Let's wrap this up with some thoughts on what we can learn from those frostbitten badasses, and how we can step up in a world that's got its own kind of chill. Let's hit rewind one last time. Our ancestors faced a world where every day was a gamble, freezing cold, hungry predators, and no safety net. They kept fires burning through blizzards, hunted creatures that could crush them, and built shelters from whatever the tundra coughed up. They weren't just surviving, they were problem solving like nobody's business, crafting tools, sharing knowledge, and leaning on each other to make it through. Their grit and smarts turned a hostile planet into a place where humanity could take root. Fast forward to today, and we're living in their victory laps, sipping coffee, scrolling apps, and complaining when the AC's too cold. But their story isn't just about how far we've come. It's a reminder of what's still in us, waiting to be tapped when life gets tough. Think about it, the Ice Age forced our ancestors to evolve, not just physically, but mentally. They didn't have manuals or tutorials, yet they figured out how to track game, heal wounds, and build communities that lasted. Those skills, adaptability, teamwork, resilience didn't vanish when the ice melted. They're why we went from caves to cities, from flint spears to smartphones. Every time you solve a problem at work, rally your friends for a project, or push through a tough day, you're channeling a bit of that Ice Age hustle. But let's be real, we've gotten comfy. We freak out when the Wi-Fi lags or our grocery delivery is late. Our ancestors would probably look at us, shake their heads, and mutter, "These kids wouldn't last a day in a snowstorm." Here's the kicker, though our world isn't as safe as we think. Sure, we're not dodging mammoths, but we've got our own beasts to face climate change, digital overload, or even just the chaos of keeping up with life in 2025. The Ice Age taught our ancestors to adapt to a world that kept changing, and we're in the same boat. Rising temperatures, supply chain hiccups, or the next big disruption, whatever it is, we'll need more than an app to get through. Their story shows us that survival isn't about having all the answers. It's about staying sharp, working together, and not giving up when things get rough. Maybe it's time we traded some of our screen time for a bit of their problem-solving mojo. So what lessons can we steal from the Ice Age playbook? First, embrace the grind. Our ancestors didn't survive by waiting for things to get easier. They got to work. Next time you're stressed about a deadline or a broken plan, think about them hauling mammoth bones to build a hut. Second, lean on your tribe. They survived because they trusted each other, shared the load, and didn't let ego get in the way. In our hyper-connected yet lonely world, maybe we need to rebuild those real connections, put down the phone, and actually talk to someone. And third, keep learning. They didn't have Google, but they studied their world like it was their job. We've got endless info at our fingertips. Maybe it's time to use it to grow, not just to scroll. Now let's get personal. If the world threw you a curveball, no power, no internet, no grocery store, could you hack it? Could you figure out how to stay warm, find food, or rally your people to get through? Be honest, most of us would struggle to light a fire without a lighter, let alone take on a frozen wilderness. But here's the good news, we've got the same DNA as those Ice Age survivors. Their resilience is in us, even if it's buried under layers of convenience. The question is, how do we wake it up? Maybe it's learning a new skill, like growing your own food or fixing something instead of tossing it. Maybe it's building stronger ties with your community so you've got a crew to lean on when things go south. Or maybe it's just pushing yourself to get through the next tough day without complaining. Their story also reminds us to appreciate what we've got. Next time you're annoyed about a slow delivery or a cold office, think about a life where heating meant huddling around a fire you spent hours starting. We're living in a world our ancestors could only dream of, but that doesn't mean we're invincible. Their triumphs show what's possible when we tap into our inner grit, but their failures warn us what happens when we don't adapt. As we face our own challenges, whether it's a warming planet or just the daily grind, let's take a page from their book. Stay sharp, stay connected, and don't let a little discomfort stop you. So what do you think? If you were dropped into the Ice Age, how would you fare? Could you keep a fire going, outsmart a predator, or hold your tribe together? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear how you'd stack up against our prehistoric MVPs. If this deep dive into the Ice Age got you thinking, give us a like, share this video with your crew, and hit that subscribe button to catch more stories about how our past shapes our future. Want to keep exploring? Check out our video on the wildest battles in human history for more epic tales of survival. Thanks for joining us on this chilly journey. We're stoked to have you along. Stay warm, stay curious, and we'll see you in the next one.